Georgie, welcome to the podcast.
And thank you so much for having me on.
That's okay. I'm so excited to connect with you. And you're all about women empowerment, and that's what I'm all about. So I'm
Yeah.
so excited for people to learn about you. So before I kind of jump into all the things that I want to ask you today, can you just explain to everybody who you are and what you do and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Georgie Purcell. I'm an Animal Justice Party MP in the State Parliament in Victoria. And I am currently the youngest woman in the Parliament. I got elected, I was 29 or 30, I think. And which has been a pretty cool experience because part of the reason I wanted to come into here in the first place was, of course, to advance an animal protection platform, but to I guess, expand the diversity of voices that are so often lacking in our political systems. And I'm sure I don't need to tell anyone that politics hasn't traditionally been a place for women and hasn't been a place for young people. So I'm actually about to turn 33. So I feel like I can't keep pushing the young person narrative for that much longer. But I mean, young for politics. But what I'd really like to see is, of course, you can vote from when you're 18 years old and you can run for parliament from when you're 18 years old. So, getting more young people into this place and with a seat at the table is really important to me.
Yes, I love it. And also, I've noticed that you have a lot of women in your team. Is that
Yes.
on purpose?
Yeah, of course. I used to work as a political staffer myself, and the I think lack of inclusion in politics for women, it's not just at the politician level, it's at all levels in which our parliaments and our political decision making systems operate. So it was really important to me to give those opportunities to young women as well to come into this place and do this job that they might not have otherwise been considered for. And I think women make great leaders and great staff, and have a really great workplace.
Yes, I love that. And it seems to me like you make things fun. And that's the thing. If people think of politics, we think of stuffy and boring and, oh, Jesus, what are they on about now? But when I'm following you, everything is fun and in jest and just it just feels creative. And is that your personality shining through, or is that how you operate more from that authentic, raw kind of place?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I have really great comm staff who are absolutely fantastic at elevating the messages we want to put out there. But one thing that I was really passionate about doing when I got elected is I feel like politicians intentionally keep the way that our parliaments operate and the way that decisions are made from people. It's really gate kept because with more, civics education and political understanding, it empowers people and, it shows people that we actually work for them. And a lot of politicians don't want people thinking that. I just really wanted to share what I'm doing and more broadly how this job works in a way that was easy for people to understand, because it should be easy for people to understand. And I think for women in particular, a big reason why we've had to work so hard to increase representation in our parliaments is because there's a lack of understanding of, how this system operates and what it involves. And by excluding people out from them, it makes them feel like they couldn't be involved in it themselves. So I obviously want to get a lot done while I'm doing this job, but one thing that was really important to me that I said from the moment I got elected is if people at least look at the work that I'm doing and think, hey, she's kind of like me, maybe I could do that job as well, that, is enough for me in itself.
Yeah, I love this. The relatability, I guess, that's what you brought to the table. And
Yeah.
I think that's why you have so much support, because you just say it how it is and you keep it raw and honest. And even in the way that you advocate for the things that mean so much to you, I think it's really amazing that you go up against some of these people that have probably been in politics, men in particular, for a really long time, and they have very traditional voices and very traditional ways that they think about certain things. And how do you sort of stand up there and be so brave and confident, like talking to these people that are probably looking at you with blank faces and no expression? Like, how do you give yourself that boost of empowerment, I guess, to advocate the way you do?
Yeah. It's been a journey. I think one thing for me as well is that I came into this no skeletons in the closet. So I spoke very openly about, who I was and what I'd done in the past when I got elected, which I think initially set me back. And when I first got elected, I think other politicians and also the sort of industries in which I am sort of taking on and those sort of like powerful interests thought it would be a bit of a joke and was a little bit funny. And then with time showing, no, actually, this is just part of who I am. And, it doesn't impact my ability to do this job. And women can be multifaceted. And there's this really strong there was this really strong interest in my past of, that I used to be a stripper when I was at university. But what's really interesting is that, when it comes to the politician checklist of, being a lawyer, a union official, a political staffer, that's how most people come into this place. I've actually done all three. But instead of looking at the things that, many people would think qualify you for this job, which I think is absolute bullshit, like anyone can be a politician as long as you care about the community that you're representing.
Yeah.
That wasn't considered. And I think that's a really sort of gendered, whether it's conscious or unconscious, people thought that I wasn't equipped to do this job, even though I had more than the skills of most people that come into here that are seen as completely competent and capable politicians. But it's been like a long journey to be taken as a serious outfit. And I think we're very much considered that way now. And part of that has been, talking openly. Like I said, I get messages all the time from people who say, I actually don't agree with what you're saying, but I really appreciate that you explain to me why you think that way. You're honest about how it works and you open yourself up to everyone. And I think that is a really sort of lacking quality in many politicians, is that ability to sort of front up, to have the conversations that you want to have, knowing that not everyone's going to agree with them. So I have really sort of made that effort to always explain why I'm doing what I'm doing, even if people might not necessarily agree with it, and even if I'm a lone voice, which I often am.
Yeah, and how do you handle that? Like, have you always been very like confident with what you believe, and have you haven't had any of that people pleaser energy, or have you had that and you've had to sort of like cut that out and heal from it and just believe in yourself? What's that
I'm a
journey been
massive,
like?
I'm a massive people pleaser.
Oh,
I've really had to
yeah.
learn to manage my people pleasing.
Mhm.
But coupled alongside that, I believe really strongly in what I believe in, and I've sort of
Mhm.
always been that way since I was a kid. I never planned on being a politician, and it was very sort of surprising to me how it coincidentally came about, and came about quite quickly.
Mhm.
But my family says it's the least surprising thing ever. Like, I went vegetarian when I was 4 years old in a country town, and I'd walk around the town telling everyone what I thought about their decisions. And I was quite political even at primary school, and I'd try and organize a class to get involved in all these causes. And I guess, that really demonstrates being political doesn't necessarily mean being a politician. It means just,
Mhm.
caring about the way in which politics not only affects our own lives, but other people's lives and, of course, animals' lives.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've really had to learn to sort of, I guess, one, advocate myself and to overcome imposter syndrome. That's a really big
Mhm.
element of my life. And I think in many women's lives, no matter what we're doing, being made to feel like we're not capable and we don't belong, because that's sort of an ongoing journey for me. And I still have bad days with it. But I'm
Mhm.
really lucky that I have amazing staff who support me. I've got a great group of friends who, have, I always say you need a best friend who doesn't understand what your job is when you're a politician. And that is my best friend. She supports the work that I do and thinks it's amazing, but she doesn't understand a thing about it. So having those people that you can sort of remind you and bring you back to the real world is also so great for me as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's it's really funny when you probably have friends who are like, "Oh my God, like we've known you for so long and now you're like standing up there and you're like in front of people and talking and it's all very weird." Like it'd be
So
strange for them.
it's so funny. And because I sort of really found this community, particularly among young women, and like really lucky that it's across the whole country and even international, that,
Mm,
more and more young women are coming into politics, and we've sort of become known through particularly our digital platforms. My best friend, she lives in another state now, and she's mentioned to a few people before that, we're best friends and we have been for well over a decade now. And she'll tell people, and they'll be like, no, that's like not true. And she's like, it's a weirdest experience for me that I have to get up my phone and show them a photo, because she's like, you're just Georgie to me. Like, you're a politician
yeah.
now, but you're just Georgie to me. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh, I
very,
love
very
that.
weird for my like long-term friends, and of course for my family.
Oh, for sure. But I love the fact that they have always seen something within you, and that's really nice to hear that they've always believed that there's like a path like this for you out there. You just happen to find it now. And I think
Yeah.
too, like the timing of everything is so important. Like you wouldn't have been the politician you are today if you had a got this like way back when. Like it was
Oh,
always meant to land like right now. Do you feel that too? Like the timing of it worked for where you were in your life?
yeah, absolutely. I'm like a big believer in things happening, at the right time and when they're meant to. And I think this came at a time in my life when I was ready for it. I've been very open about like my mental health struggles in the past, and this is not a job that I could have done when I was younger. But I think if I did it when I was older, I would have, really left this sort of critical conversation out of politics, which is, bringing different people in and young people and, not waiting until a stage in your life where you're apparently equipped to be a politician. That's something I think I was actually talking to a student just this morning who said, "Do you like have any advice for me if I want to do the same thing as you?" And I said, like, don't let anyone tell you that you have to wait to do this job, because the whole point of politics is we all have a different perspective to share at different stages of our lives. And those perspectives, from a diversity of angles is so important, and something that's really stifled political systems and I think has set politics back. We always say politics is, and legislation is far behind community sentiment. It's because we so often don't have the people that are living the challenges
Yeah.
that, people are facing in here. And, bringing people in the stages that they're at helps to overcome that.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that that's the thing, you're like doing it in the moment. Like it's affecting
Yeah.
you, you're already seeing it, so it's like current for
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
absolutely.
I love it. Well, I have something to ask. It's around the hate that you
Okay.
probably receive. I've seen it too. I love some of the reels you put up, which is just like fuck you to these people who are
Yeah.
like just so rude. And it's about weird things too, about like the way that you dress, your tattoos, like the way that you present yourself, the way that you've been a stripper in the past, all that kind of stuff. And people are really weird. Like they get stalkerish.
Yeah.
Like I can only imagine what you've experienced. How do you deal with these people like coming at you like day to day? Do you just have your really great team who are like pushing all these people out of your path?
Yeah, it's a few things. One thing that I actually have developed, which I think is wrong, and I need to highlight that it's wrong, is I have a really sort of unhealthy amount of resilience now. And I don't like that that is considered necessary to do this job. Rather than telling women that they need to learn to deal with this stuff, what we need to do is actually stop it from happening anyway. One of my biggest concerns is that people will look at the work that I'm doing and think, I'd really love to do that, but I couldn't cop the way that she is treated.
Mm,
So that's part of the reason why I call it out, because, we need to hold people accountable for this. And,
mm,
one of the blessings of having a big platform is, it allows you to amplify your voice and your message to a lot of people. But the downside of it is it brings a lot of like really kind of fucked people in as well.
yeah.
So I do have a great team around me, but I'm very aware that, particularly my staff who are also on my social media, that they need to read the comments that I receive as well. And, it's all young women who monitor my pages. And of course, like seeing relentless sexism and misogyny has impact on them as well. We've actually recently installed like an AI bot to monitor my comments.
Mm,
So it filters out like gendered abuse and threats and things like that. But yeah, I've sort of gotten sadly really used to it, but at the same
yeah.
time, I know that it's, very, very wrong. And, we've been putting a lot of pressure on governments to act on this with the rise of things like AI. And then, of course, politicians being on social media as part of our jobs now,
Mm,
or women in public life in general, right? Everyone's on social media. And I'm really lucky that I have the ability to call it out to an audience. But gendered abuse is something that everyone receives, whether it's, girls in high school or just,
mm,
women who are on the internet. Something that
mm,
I always sort of like to point out though is the hypocrisy in which these comments I receive, what's sort of veiled in that. So often I even get,
mm,
men comment being like more politics and less, making videos. Where it's like every single politician is doing that now, but we always just tried to find a way to discredit women. Like,
mm.
no one's criticizing men for being on social media.
No.
But it's just, finding these like sort of little bits about us to try and make us seem like we're not we're not serious. I think people really like to think that I'm not a serious person, whereas I'm actually just trying to use my audience to communicate in a way that people understand. And I actually think that's something that we're really, really good at. But there's this constant devaluing and discreditment that men in politics just absolutely don't receive. You know, they don't receive commentary on how they look or what they're wearing, or, you know, the way that they communicate. It's just accepted, you know, that whatever they do must be right. And that's certainly not my experience.
Yeah, and I think too, like just from a perspective of looking at how popular you are because you just say it how it is and it's interesting. I feel like that people will probably just be on your page because they're like, firstly, they obviously believe in you, but the people who even don't, I feel like they're coming just for the entertainment or to see what you're going to do next
Yeah.
kind of thing because you keep it so interesting.
Yeah.
But have you like found that some of like those male pages aren't as interactive or people aren't really like in amongst it like they are with you because you're a point of difference to the
Yeah,
norm?
absolutely. And I think, you know, someone had to do this differently in order for things to change. And I'm probably a little bit of the test case for that, at least here in Australia. So
Mm.
it wasn't a surprise for me when that commentary started coming through and my audience started to build. One thing that I like to do when I have the time and the mental energy is there has been a few, I've actually never said this publicly, but there's been a few instances where I've taken things into my own hands where I'm like so frustrated by men on the internet and a little while ago, I received a threat that was so vile from, you know, a hunter, and something that I experience is probably adds to the weight of it all for me is I'm typically taking on industries that are male dominated, racing industries, shooters. So that sexism is like really amplified, I find, from those male dominated industries. And I
Mm.
received quite a violent threat from a hunter who it's what one of the things that's often like the most terrifying for me is I'll click on their profile and they'll have photos of like young daughters and you know this is how they're speaking to women on the internet and it's like you know what are you you know what message are you sending to, you know, to your family treating women like this. But I had this hunter send me a message and I actually screenshot it and put on my story and tagged him because like well fuck you if you're going to write this on the internet you know you can be held accountable for it. And what often happens when you hold men accountable for their actions is he sent me a message and was like profusely apologizing and saying, you know, what can I do? And I said, I'll take down my story if you make a donation to a gender-based violence service. And I made him show that he'd made a donation. And then so I removed it. It's just like my way of being like, no, because I know when I do that, other people are watching as well. And it might make them sort of second guess their actions because on online gendered abuse, like it has an impact on me and I've learned to deal with it, but it has much more serious and sort of dangerous, harmful implications. And that is, you know, it deters women and gender diverse people or people who might not have typically been welcome into politics away from running. And that's like fundamentally bad for democracy. So I think, you know, if we can show people, at least scare them into showing them that it's not on while we wait for this sort of broader social and cultural change.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to do that, which I know is a little bit controversial, but you know, if people want to put things under their names, then they can be held accountable for what they put under their name.
Definitely. I love that. That's such a fuck you. I love it so much. Oh my God. I want to kind of switch gears into like women's health, and you're a big advocate for women's health, women's rights, listening to our own voices and allowing ourselves to be heard. And it reminded me when I was like putting together what I wanted to ask you. My wife Jade had this episode years ago where her ovary had partly erupted, and she went to the hospital, and they were like, you know, we'll just give you some pain relief. And she's like, well, it's basically malfunctioned. Like, I'm in agony. Can't you just take it out? Right. And they're like, no, we can't take it out. You have to go through this whole process. And we have to talk to your partner and make sure that it's okay that now you're not going to potentially have the children. And it was just this whole thing that was ridiculous. And I just thought, how can we not decide what we want to do with our own bodies? And I know you've said things before about you having to go to a particular hospital that was non-religious to get an IUD removed. And I just think so much needs to shift here in terms of like our voices and women's rights and women's health. So I want to know your perspective on all of this.
I think fundamentally this comes down to women, not being given the credit to have their own autonomy over their own bodies, and like we can't be trusted to make decisions that are best for us. And I think that's really clearly evidenced by how often I hear stories like that, where, women who are suffering long-term chronic reproductive health problems that are causing them immense pain and affecting their everyday life, being denied the surgery or the healthcare that they need in order to function and to operate, and trusting them to know what's best for them. I think that's really evidenced by the fact that a man can walk in and get a vasectomy without like basically any consultation, without, asking them if they have a partner, without asking them about, whether they're aware of the impact on their ability to have kids. And it's just this deeply ingrained medical misogyny that I think we're only just really starting to learn more and more about, the way in which women's experiences are so often discounted in the health system. And it can be conscious, but it can also be really unconscious. And, I've been through a similar thing. Like I said, over the summer, had to get my IUD removed, which was in the wrong place. I had an ultrasound that showed it was in my uterus wall. It was causing me immense pain. I could barely function. And I couldn't get, even though it was a necessary medical surgery, a religious hospital wouldn't take me, so I had to wait for a spot in a non-religious hospital. And this is just that control that exists from, our political systems to our healthcare systems over women's bodies. But I went through a similar experience when I was younger, and I knew that I had something wrong with me, and I was going to GPs for years and years and years, explaining my symptoms, and they were just being fobbed off. And it took me about 6 or 7 years to get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that is predominantly affects women. And I've got that diagnosis now, but they still know nothing about, how it affects us, how it comes about, because they don't bother putting, research or funding or investment into women's health. And, that it starts from the, minimizing our experiences and not trusting us to know what's best for us. And it goes all the way up to when we know what's wrong with us, not putting, the ability to learn more about why this is happening and how we stop it. I've been talking a lot about endometriosis lately as well. And, I don't have endometriosis, but there's women in my office that do. My best friend does. And, I see how much that affects their everyday life, to function, to work, to get about their jobs, to care for their families. And there's this mentality that women just suck it up in a way that men don't. And, we still have so far to go to overcome that.
Hey, ho, lime glow. Hey, ho, lime glow. Go get some.
I agree. I have friends who have the same thing, and I'm like, I don't know how you're functioning. They're like, I can't have a normal job, because they don't get it. They're like, oh, come into work. What do you mean? Oh, you're sick again, or you got something again. It's like, yeah, but you live with that. Like, do you want me to stab you in the stomach?
Exactly. And women are so often affected by, what we know is invisible illness. Like, I have a chronic autoimmune disease that causes extreme fatigue, and, it's a rheumatoid condition, so I have chronic pain. And then, of course, like, one of my staff has endo, and we're really lucky that we have a supportive workplace where people can say, hey, this is my thing going on, and no one like discounts it for a second, and no one doesn't believe it. But most people aren't that lucky where, they can be honest about what they're experiencing. And I think for women in particular, we know that it's already so much harder for us in workplaces, in society. And then when we've got these other things that affect our lives, it's, it flows into like broader sort of social and cultural disadvantages as well.
It does, for sure. And I hope that it gets better. That's my hope. Just every year something shifts just a little bit, so that people feel a little bit more supported and understood, and don't feel like they're alone. So
yeah, totally. And that's part of the reason why I feel this obligation to talk about it, because a big part of that is being seen, first of all, and that visibility, and, having someone acknowledge that we believe this is real and is a thing and it needs to be taken seriously, which I think is one of the beautiful things that has come about from having more women in politics, is we don't just have men now who don't understand these things and, have no lived experience with them, and women being able to get up and say, hey, here's my story. In fact, I have ongoing sort of issues with our Premier here in Victoria and some of the decisions she makes. But I think one of the best things that she ever did was when she became the Premier, she got up and announced the Women's Pain Inquiry, and shared that she's been suffering with endometriosis, since she was in her 20s, and it affected her ability to have kids. And, seeing someone that's gotten to the point of being the top, office holder in the state, having that lived experience that is so common for so many people, we know that visibility matters, and seeing people in roles where, they're affected by these things, it affects so many people, it makes such a huge difference. And that's sort of what helps bring about the change, I think, particularly for like flexibility for women, and then, branching further into like funding and research and infrastructure and support. It all plays a really important part.
Oh, that's actually really nice to hear that there's
Yeah.
somebody in a position like that that is advocating for this,
Yeah.
because it's definitely so incredibly present.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about you being vegan, because
Yes.
Jade and I are vegan, and
Amazing.
like we just absolutely love it. And this is part of the reason why we loved you right at the start. We're like, she's vegan, but like, yes, we jumped on board. But
Yeah.
we get so much hate, like on the internet, off the internet, about where we get our protein from. All these like
Yeah.
gym bros have like this, oh no, especially because I'm low iron. I've always had low iron, even when I went, actually, this is another medical thing. I went to have an iron infusion a while ago, and I ended up having a seizure during the procedure, and I ended up going to the hospital, and the guy said to me, okay, well, we probably can't give you iron infusions again, but your iron is so low, like, do you eat meat? And I was like, no, I don't, I'm vegan. And he's like, oh, that's why you're deficient, because you don't have enough meat, and la la la. And I was like, look, in my family we have low iron, we can't absorb it. I have friends who are eating a shit ton of meat, same thing. My family eat meat, I don't, we still have the same thing. But you're throwing in my face that I have to eat meat in order to like fix my deficiency, but actually has nothing to do with that, and I get enough protein, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah.
felt to come at me and be like, oh, that's the reason why, like, you're
Yeah.
just you're deficient because you're not doing the right thing by eating meat. Do you get this bullshit as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that, again, it actually flows back into what we were just talking about is, whether we eat meat or not. It's actually really, really common for women in particular to be low in iron, particularly menstruating women or menstruating people. It's sort of just like a fixture of, our bodily function. And I really hate this idea that it's overcome by eating meat. I have, not all my friends are vegan, and I have friends with iron deficiencies as well that do eat meat. And I think it's this, lack of understanding and education, particularly in healthcare, about nutrition. And so many people not understanding that, not only can you get everything you possibly need from eating a vegan diet, that it's actually got so many health benefits on top of that, something that, we still don't address, as, a country, particularly in Australia. I actually posted about this the other day. We consume so much more meat compared to other countries, and it's having serious health impacts. It leads to things like colon cancer. Meat is a carcinogen. It's the equivalent. Some processed meats are the equivalent of smoking cigarettes, and of course we know the dangers of smoking, but we still have a long way of understanding the impact of eating animal products and what that does to our bodies and to our health. And I think there's this real fear because our governments and animal agriculture, they're in lockstep with each other. And our country in particular, we have this like deep ingrained cultural ties to we're born off a sheep's back, in colonization, which, is a whole other problematic part of our past. And it's just ingrained in us that, this is the way that we do things. And I've certainly experienced it myself. I've been vegetarian, like I said, since I was a kid. I've been vegan since I was 19, and I have these, chronic health problems that are completely unrelated to me being vegan. And if someone who wasn't vegan had them, they wouldn't question their diet. But immediately when you have a health issue and you're vegan, that's what seems to be what people default to. I do think that, again, like that's starting to slowly be overcome. We're having more and more sort of medical practitioners learn about the benefits that come with, eating a vegan diet and what that can mean for us. And I think for me, since I went vegan, I'm like I feel physically healthier than I ever have before. And I think leading by example, which of course you do as well, is such an important part of it. And this isn't my entire identity, but it's a really important part of who I am, and that's never going to change. And more and more people are getting on board with it, and that change slowly comes with as we grow as a population in terms of turning to plant-based eating.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not judging anyone who you eat whatever you want to eat. But for me personally, like I'm lactose intolerant. That's why I
Yeah,
just became default vegan because I was
yeah,
already vegetarian. Then I'm like, oh shit, I'm lactose. I'm like, all right, well, we're vegan now. And Jade
yeah,
was already on the train. She's like, I can't handle dairy. She had a really bad like chicken incident where she was hospitalized because she just had, it wouldn't have mattered how they cooked this chicken, it had whatever it had in it. And
yeah,
I think that people don't understand. Ironically, Jade was a butcher, like way back in the day when she was like coming out of school. And she goes, you know what, Jess, people don't know, but like in like meat, you like have like there's cancers and shit, and they
yeah,
like look a certain way, and you don't cut the cancer out of the meat, you just massage it in. And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh my God, people are eating cow cancer. I'm
yeah.
like, at the visuals, I'm just like, I just cannot even cope.
It's really interesting because I often will have replacement proteins, so like fake chicken or other fake meats, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of interest sort of from people who do eat meat when I have that, and they're like, "Oh,
Mm.
how do you eat that?" Like it's like gross or disgusting or whatever. And I find particularly when I talk about cultured meat or cell-based meat that is actually grown from an animal product in a lab and is sort of seen as a future for replacing meat eating habits. I'm always like, have you seen what happens in a factory farm? Like you've seen how it feels like thousands of animals stacked in together and then put on a voyage and then into a slaughterhouse. It's just and it's intentionally secretive. Like animal agriculture does not want people to see what goes on there because I genuinely believe people want to eat it, one for the animals, two for their own health. Seeing the conditions in which animals
Yeah.
sort of live and die. But the other thing as well that left out of this conversation is the just huge environmental impacts of
Yeah.
the way in which we eat animals. We know so much now about coal and gas and what that does to the climate and the emissions. What a lot of people don't realise is that agribusiness is just as bad, if not worse, in terms of being a climate culprit. And we all have a really big part to play on an individual level to at least limit that consumption if we do want to have a planet that we can all live on, because animal agriculture is just absolutely destroying the earth.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm an advocate for this. I think that, like I said, no judgment to anybody. I don't care what you're doing out there, but maybe if you just eat a little bit less meat and a little more veganish, I feel like you
Yeah,
might feel better.
I agree. I have really gone on the journey from being like super militant vegan and like angry about what I learned and what I knew. And I soon realized that you actually bring more people on board by just showing people that this is a really easy thing to do. And so
Yeah.
many people in my life started off, reducing their meat and dairy intake and have slowly just realized how great they felt, and they felt like they were doing a good thing. And my family took years and years and years to come on board, and now they're all vegetarian or vegan, and just sort of seeing the way in which you can do this and it's quite easy and it's accessible, and that's really changed in a big way. I think the worst thing that and I'm guilty of this as well, is I used to cast judgment on people who weren't the same as me, and it's often just that lack of understanding because we're intentionally kept from those decisions. They don't want us to know what this looks like and how it impacts the earth and animals. And it's part of my job actually in here to help people understand that in a way that brings them on board and makes them feel included rather than isolated, because isolating people out and making them feel guilty is one of the worst ways to bring about change.
I agree. I think you just do whatever you want to do. But
Yeah.
vegan food's actually really nice. If you find like the right places and the right stuff, a lot of the time my friends are trying to eat shit off my plate. I'm like, hey, you stick to your own shit.
Yeah. It's always a way you go to a function and there's like a vegan option and people are like, oh, I'd like to try that. And it's like, no, that's for the
Yes.
vegans.
I know, that's always gone. I'm like, go
Yeah.
eat your meat. I'm like, this is my stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. I just kind of want to tap into your own intuition, your own spirituality? Like, how has that played a part in your life, like just in general, and maybe even in your career as well? Do you get epiphanies? Do you get downloads? Do you like go with your gut and your intuition when you're up there, like on the podium? Like, how does it impact you?
I have really realized in the past few years that I'm an incredibly intuitive person. And I think I especially learned that when I was running my election campaign, which should have been a really, really stressful period of my life. And I just had this feeling that everything was going to be okay. And as it got closer and closer to sort of election day and, not knowing what my future held, it sounds like really weird to say now, but I just knew that I was going to be in Parliament. Like I could see that. I was telling my friend yesterday when we went for a walk with my dogs that it was just this like unlock this weird part of me that I think I just felt this comfort in sort of knowing that this is where I was going to be. And it's been on my mind a lot because I'm up for re-election next year in November, and I have this just like odd sense of calmness and stillness that is like very off brand for me because I'm like quite a anxious, like high functioning anxious person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really realized from that I've always been very, very intuitive. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with Myers-Briggs personality types, but I'm an INFJ, which is the sort of less common sort of intuitive type. And I just feel like I've always been like very sort of like locked into this part of myself where even though I can be a very stressed person and, chaotic person, I do always know the parts of my life that are going to be okay and that things are going to work out. So yeah, I didn't really realize that my election campaign was when I really realized that part of myself. But there's been other parts of my life where I've just had feelings things are going to happen, and
Yeah.
then they've happened. And I also think, having those positive thoughts around it is something that I've really learned plays a big part.
I agree. It's like that positive reinforcement of living in that high vibrational space of why couldn't it be me? Why wouldn't
Yeah.
it be me?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh no, it's probably not. Like, I feel like we can get ourselves into like a real tizzy thinking about things. And that's that inner knowing. That's like that psychic piece that you have within your soul where you just trust.
Yeah.
And when you have that trust that the universe has your back and that your loved ones on the other side are going to come to the party when you need them, I feel like life just feels so much better. It's like you've
Yeah.
just got this faith for something's going to happen the way it's going to happen, and it's going to land either this way or that way, but either way, you're going to find your way.
Exactly. And I think the other thing for me as well is I have experienced a lot of loss in my animal family life over the past few years. And like I've had to find that sort of comfort in knowing, I really in particular one of my dogs, Greta, who passed away on like a really important day for me in my career. I've always felt like she's been a little bit like there for me since then because it was such a big part of I was having it was a week that the government didn't ban duck shooting and the week that my body got photoshopped on the news and then my dog died and I felt like I never fully got to like process or like grieve her death, but like I feel like she's sort of there guiding my work for me in other ways since
Yeah.
then because she left my life so suddenly.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I feel like when I'm on podcasts, I don't usually like channel for people, but I just feel like when you're saying this to me, that she actually left on that day for a reason. I think because you were distracted by all these other things that were going on and they were like burning platforms for you. I think that she was like, oh, I'm going to go now because you have other things to focus on.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to be in a ball in the corner and you're not going to be able to move forward. So even though you feel robbed of processing the grief of what happened there, I feel like that she kind of did it for you.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. And I'm the personality type that is very much like pick myself up and work through, which, can be good and bad, and then letting myself deal with things on my own terms. And I think I very much deal with like my grief and my feelings through my work, which I think a lot of people who work in like passion, cause-based jobs do when you care about things so deeply and feel them so deeply.
yeah.
And one thing with being an Animal Justice Party MP and, having a family of animals is not only are they your thing that takes you away from your work and sort of gives you that place away from it, they also drive your work because, they're the reason you want to create a better life for animals. And I completely agree with that. It was like she knew that I had a task to do it. I had to push through it.
Mhm.
And then, I just had to get through it. And,
Yeah.
had to deal with it in other ways. But, you know, everyone deals with things differently. And I
Yeah.
had this like guilt that I perhaps like didn't stop and process it. But I think, you know, it's driven my work in other ways.
Yeah, she wanted you to do it. She wanted
Yeah.
you to move forward and, like, you know, make her proud. And you do
Yeah.
every day. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, before we go into the most random questions that I have for you that my wife has prepared
Yes.
earlier, what's the best way that people can connect with you and follow you? Can you let everyone know where to go?
Yes. So I'm most active on Instagram, which is
Mhm.
georgie.purcell.ajp. However, if people have an inquiry that they need a response from me on, my email is best, georgie.purcell@parliament.vic.gov.au. I am on other social media platforms, but being like a mid-level millennial, Instagram is where I feel most at home. But
Yeah.
yeah, I tend to stay away from my DMs just because of what we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
So genuine inquiries to email. Otherwise, follow my work on Instagram. That's where you can see everything that's going on.
I love that. I'm the same as you. I'm like an Instagram girl. I'm like
Yeah,
on TikTok, but I'm like, well, I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
no, get me my community. I want to be on Instagram where all the
yeah,
people are at.
yeah, definitely.
I love it. Okay, your first random question is if you're, no, what is it? Is your time truly wasted if you enjoy wasting it?
No, and that's something that I've had to learn is I punish myself for resting because I feel like it's wasting time, and that's something I've definitely learned in the past few years is that rest is vital and it's not wasted time.
Yes, I'm the
Yeah,
same. I'm like, oh, I could be doing this and I could be doing that. And I'm like, let me just waste time. Like,
yeah,
I want to be like just
absolutely.
chilling.
In fact, there's nothing I love more than lying on my bed or sitting in my car when I've just passed it and parked it and doing like little phone rot. I've had to learn
Yeah.
myself not feel guilt for that.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
the phone rot. I do that all the time. I love it. Okay. Oh God, this is going to be interesting. What kind of noises did dinosaurs make?
Oh, do I need to actually make the noise? Or
Yeah, why not?
God, my staff can now hear me, so they're gonna think I'm absolutely insane. I feel like it's like a raw. Is that
Definitely, you nailed it. That's what I reckon too. Your staff are going to be thinking, I think she's lost her
yeah,
shit.
there's a head on the desk right now.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, your last question. Why do you think 11 isn't pronounced 1T1?
Do you know what? I've never thought about this before, but what I would say is like English is like one of the most absurd languages, right? So it probably should be 1T1. But then wouldn't 21 be 2T1?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
it just goes on. And then, like, who knows what the hell we're talking about? Oh my God, I love
Maybe
it.
we should just start calling it that.
I reckon we should. We should create a thing. People
Yeah.
think in Parliament, if you start saying that, they'll be like, I think Georgie's not well.
Yeah. Time for her to go.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. It has been so awesome to chat to you.
Oh my gosh, it's been so great to chat with you. I'm so glad we did it.
Me too. Thank you so much.